Let's go with your
So
first gig.
yeah, so I played at Brown, and I knew that my entire senior year I knew I wanted to get into coaching. I was at that point I was locked in. And I'm around all these ambitious students at Brown who are applying to consulting firms. They're applying to their jobs, and I'm going, well, how do I kickstart my career? And what I did was in the winter break of my senior year, I wrote a letter to every 320 or however many D1 head coaches. And I said, this is who I am. This is what I want to do. Please put me on your radar. And I got a lot of letters back. I got a letter back from Pat Summit. I got a handwritten note back from Tara
Wow.
Vanderveer. I got, a number of, Jim Jaber, who was coaching Providence down the street, said, hey, come watch practice. It was pretty cool. Just the interactions I got. And then most of them didn't have jobs, but at least I was on their radar.
Yeah.
And then the day after I graduated, I got my first coaching opportunity at Syracuse. Mariana Freeman. I don't know if you know that name, but she had been Vivian Stringer's
I did my
assistant
homework.
at Iowa. And I'm so grateful to her because I was 21 years old and she hired me. And that was kind of my entree into coaching. And I've literally been a basketball coach every single day since then, since the day I graduated college. Different levels, different roles, different titles, but been a coach every single day since, which is pretty cool.
Well, when you blew your knee out in high school, I heard you also, I did some research. You weren't only a player at Brown, you was like the assistant or something. You were multitasking while you were there. How was
Yeah,
that?
yeah. My teammates will tell you probably more coaching stories about me than playing stories at Brown. But yeah, I knew I wanted to get into coaching, so I got to be a little bit of a student assistant. Just an incredibly kind of neat journey for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, tell me this now. This move, you led Cal. People don't know you led Cal to the Final Four. And what? After your second season, you can't. You only you were still young, and y'all. I watched those games. You went to the
Yeah.
Final Four. How was that? Tell me a
That was
little
a
bit about
magical
that.
team. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I had been at Cal as an assistant coach. I came with Joanne Boyle, who was an incredible mentor to me. She hired me when I was very young at the University of Richmond. We were successful there. And then she got the job at Cal and I came with her. Now, if you go all the way back, when Joanne took the head job at Cal in 2005, Cal had 13 losing seasons in a row, and we were picked to finish eighth in what was then the Pac 10. So eighth out of 10. 3 years later, we were eighth in the country. So Joanne really did, just a phenomenal job of turning that program around. And I was part of that. And then I get the head job at Santa Barbara. Well, I had been part of recruiting a class, the very beginning of it, that ended up being the number one recruiting class who went to Cal after I left for Santa Barbara. And so you fast forward a few years, Joanne takes the Virginia job, and now I come back. And that group had been young and kind of finding their way. They had played in the NIT the couple seasons before. So I sort of had the cheat code going in. I was very close with Joanne. I knew the potential that was there. I knew the stumbling blocks that they had had. So when I walk in the door, gosh, I think I was 31 years old, maybe 32.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at that group and said, this is not a rebuild. We have everything we need in this room. We can do this if we stay committed to the process. And my first year, we were 25-10. I like to tell people we were almost really good, right? We beat everyone that we probably were supposed to beat, which is not always easy. And we couldn't quite get over the top with, top teams. We beat Iowa in the first round of the NCAA tournament that year, and we lost to Notre Dame at Notre Dame in the second round. We lost by 9, and that was a team with Skylar Diggins and Kayla McBride. I think they went to the national championship game that year, certainly the Final Four. And Muffet McGraw says after the game, we had no seniors. She said, that's a top 10 team next year. And I remember looking at them in the locker room and saying, let's be great next year, not simply because we return everybody, but because we return everybody and let's be more hungry. Let's improve. Let's get better. And, and to their credit, I think we lost one kid in the transfer portal, maybe who wanted a
Mm-hmm.
bigger role. And other than that,
Back in the
everyone
day.
back in the day, only one. Hey, this day it might be more, but the rest of them came back, and the next year we were really ready to do something special. And we won a Pac-12 regular season conference title. We tied Stanford at 17-1. Our only losses were to one another. And you think about that, to not lose to anyone else in that league was really tough. And then we got a 2 seed, and we ended up making a Final Four. It was a really, really special group. Laisha Clarendon ended up being a first-round draft pick.
Mm-hmm.
We had multiple, post players: Shonda Gray, Jen Brandon, Talia Caldwell. We had Brittany Boyd. We had a food, right? It was a really a special group.
You raided the Bay Area. You used to kill it. You raided the Bay Area.
10 people on that team. 9 out of the 10 were from the state of California.